Number 1. Corey Sherby. In 2011, a Chilliwack, British Columbia man named Corey Sherby was found dead in his home. He was discovered on his knees in front of a sofa, his face pressed into the cushion. A sprawling pool of blood surrounded him, hardened to a crust in place where it had flowed underneath the couch on the laminate floor. Police were contacted and they found no signs of trauma to the body, no sign of a struggle, and no signs of forced entry. The pool of blood was, they said, the natural result of blood purging its fluid after death. A pathologist determined that the cause of death to be acute combined cocaine and ethanol intoxication. But the Sherbys insisted that their son did not do drugs, to the extent that he never so much as took an aspirin. Sherby's parents also claimed they found bloody footprints, which appeared to be women's, throughout the house, and a bloody handprint was found on his wallet, from which all the cash was missing. Also, a mysterious woman was supposedly seen at the apartment a few days earlier, who has not been identified to this day. Also, an empty cardboard box was found in the front hall closet, scrolled with the words, "Better be a funeral." The police say all of that can be explained. They say the bloody footprints weren't there when they arrived, and were probably the result of somebody being sloppy at the crime scene. There were no further leads indicating any crime, and the case remained cold for next 3 years. In 2014, Sherby's parents received an anonymous letter, which appears to have been written on an old typewriter. It read, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Sherby, Shakespeare said, 'Hell hath no fury, than a woman scorned.'" That's the kind of homicide it was, a scorned woman. Those who know who it was belong in too tight a group to say a word. I think your son Corey decided too late to back off, and it jeopardized his well-being, his life. Sincerely, a reader of the CHWK Times. The note also came with a photocopied Times story from August, with a highlighted sentence. It was definitely a homicide of some kind. Somebody has to know something. This note only cemented his parents' suspicions that Corey was murdered. More bizarre details came in with the mysterious case of his high school friend Tammy Bowden, who arrived at Sherby's door early one morning after his death. Banging on the door, Bowden woke them up and told the couple that she knew Corey was killed over money and drugs, but she couldn't tell them who was involved because she feared for her life. She told the Sherbys this on more than one occasion. Sadly, Bowden herself died on February 3, 2012. The Sherbys were told that she died of blood poisoning after cutting her finger. The family has the name of an ex-girlfriend they think was responsible for Corey's death. The woman reportedly acted strange at the funeral and had acted jealous and violent over the years, and even had connections to the organized crime. The police have been told all these things, yet the family says they have been rebuffed and ignored. Corey's parents still hope to find out the person responsible for their son's murder. Number 2. Derek Joseph Luking. In March of 2012, a 24-year-old man named Derek Joseph Luking failed to turn up for work, and calls to his cell phone went unanswered. 2 days later, it was determined that Derek had checked out of the Microtel Inn and Suites in Cherokee near the Great Smoky Mountains National Park on March 17th, with surveillance video of him wearing a backpack to prove it. The video footage would be the last time anyone would ever see Derek Luking. Derek's family went out to look for him that same day, but when they arrived at the hotel, he was long gone. On their journey back to Tennessee, they unexpectedly happened to come across his car parked along the newfound Gap Road. Authorities found in the abandoned car an impressive wealth of newly purchased survival gear, including a pickaxe, compass, lamp, pocket knife, knife sharpener, tent, sleeping bag, hundreds of black parachute cord, granola bars, and a survival belt containing a multi-tool, flashlight, and a fire starter rod. There was also found in the car pages from a military survival manual and Luking's wallet and cash. He had obviously been well prepared for the trip into the wilderness. but strangely he had not taken any of his stuff with him. Another eerie clue was a note that Luking had left behind in the car that simply said, "Don't try to follow me." Despite the note, authorities certainly did try to follow him. An intensive search was launched of the area, and rangers interviewed campers and hikers in the vicinity on whether they had seen Luking, but no one had. It was strange, since it had been a sunny and clear Saturday, and the area full of people engaged in outdoor activities. Yet, no one could recall seeing the missing man, leading authorities to speculate that he may have gone off trail and gotten lost. But they could not figure out why he would have done that, minus all of his shiny new equipment. This was worrying, because although the trail itself was well traveled, off-trail led into the thick wilderness, decreasing Luking's chances for survival. Authorities unsuccessfully continued their search and were baffled as to why he would have gone out on his own without his equipment, or why he had gone out to the park to begin with. Derek's family claimed that he had been a big fan of the TV show Man vs. Wild, in which host Bear Grylls gets left out in the wilderness by himself with little to no gear to find his way back to the civilization while surviving off the land and his wits. This has led authorities to speculate that he may have been trying to emulate Grylls, and this could have been why he suddenly decided to leave his own equipment behind, to make things more challenging like in the show. However, according to his family, Derek was not himself particularly experienced with the outdoors, so he may have perished in his efforts. Another theory is that Derek went off to commit suicide. The family has stated that the day he disappeared was the 1-year anniversary of the death of his grandfather, with whom he had been very close. So maybe he had gone off with no intention of coming back. The problem with this idea is that if he was planning to kill himself, why go through all the effort to buy so much new survival gear? Other ideas include that he went out to scout out the trail, planning to come back for his gear and somehow getting lost on the way, or that he was attacked by a wild animal or kidnapped. Derek Luking remains missing to this day. Number 3. Charles Chuck Morgan. On March 22, 1977, in Tucson, Arizona, escrow company owner Chuck Morgan left his home as usual and then disappeared. Morgan was a potential witness in a state land fraud case involving a known organized crime boss. On March 25th, 3 days later, Chuck stumbled back home at 2 in the morning. According to his wife Ruth, he was missing a shoe, had a plastic handcuff around one ankle, and had his hands tied together with a plastic zip tie. He could not speak, but with a pen and paper, he wrote down that he had been kidnapped and tortured. He also wrote that a hallucinogenic drug had been painted on his throat. He claimed that this drug would drive him insane or kill him if he ingested it. He asked Ruth to move his car, because he did not want them to know that he had returned home. However, he would not say who they were. He also told her not to call the police because a hit would be put out on the lives of them and their family members. For 1 week, Ruth nursed Chuck back to health by feeding him with an eyedropper. After returning to health, Morgan refused to talk about the incident, except give clues that he had been working secretly as an undercover agent for the Treasury Department and that he had fought against organized crime. He also claimed that they had taken his Treasury identification. After his kidnapping, Chuck took no chances. He wore a bulletproof vest and made sure that he was the only one who drove his daughters to and from school. But 2 months after his first disappearance, Chuck vanished again. Shortly before his second disappearance, he told his father that if anything were to happen to him, there was a letter he had written that would tell them who was responsible. However, the letter was never found. 9 days later, an unidentified woman called Ruth and said, "Chuck is alright." Ecclesiastes 12:1-8. This is a reference to a Bible passage, which reads in part, "Men are afraid of high place and of terrors on the road." Remember him before the silver cord is broken and the golden bowl is crushed. Then the dust would return to earth as it was, and the spirit would return to God who gave it. 2 days later, Chuck was found shot to death in the desert despite the fact that he was wearing a bulletproof vest. He had been shot once in the back of the head with a bullet from his .357 Magnum, which was lying beside him. The investigators also found a piece of paper with directions to the murder site written in Chuck's handwriting, and a pair of sunglasses which definitely did not belong to him. Strangely, Chuck had clipped a $2 bill inside his underwear. Written on the bill were 7 Spanish names from the letters A to G. Also, Ecclesiastes 12 was written, with the verses 1 through 8 marked by arrows drawn on the bill serial number. This was the same reference that the female caller had made to Ruth. On the back of the bill, the signers of the Declaration of Independence was numbered 1 through 7. Also, a crude map was drawn, which shows several roads between Tucson and Mexican border. The towns Robles Junction and Saseb were marked. These towns are apparently known for smuggling. Despite the unusual evidence, many in the sheriff's department believed Chuck's death was a suicide. They claimed he had shot himself in the back of the head. His family and a reporter named Don Devereaux believe he was murdered. Some investigators also suspect that his death was not a suicide. 2 days after Chuck's death, a woman called the Pima County Sheriff's Department. She said Chuck had come to meet her at a local motel just after he died. The woman called herself Green Eyes and said she was the same person who had called Chuck's wife, quoting the Bible passage. Green Eyes said that in the motel, Chuck had showed her a briefcase containing thousands of dollars in cash. He told her that the money would buy him out of the contract the mob had put on his life. 3 weeks after his death, 2 men claiming to be FBI agents arrived at the Morgan home. They told Ruth that they had to look through the house. They tore the house apart and searched for quite a while. It is unknown if they ever found anything, or if they were even FBI agents. When Devereaux contacted the FBI, they claimed they had never even heard of Chuck Morgan. There are several rumors surrounding this case, including that Chuck was killed because he was involved with illegal activity or was doing a secret work for the government. Some people even theorized that Morgan's escrow company was a front for money laundering, and the whole thing went south. His death seems just as unexplained as the events leading to it. As of now, the case remains unsolved. Number 4. Eldorado Jane Doe. On July 10, 1991, a young blonde woman known to her friends as Mercedes was shot to death by her abusive ex-boyfriend, James McAlpin, in a seedy motel room in Eldorado, Arkansas. Mercedes was Caucasian, approximately 5 foot 10 inches tall, and estimated to weigh around 150 to 162 pounds. Her age was estimated to be between 18 and 30 years old, and she had a small birthmark or scar beneath her left breast. She was carrying a social security card and identification card under the name Cheryl Ann Vick, but it turned out that real Cheryl Ann Vick was alive and well in Minneapolis, and Mercedes had stolen her identity. No one seemed to know who Mercedes actually was. Even when James McAlpin was caught and convicted for Mercedes' murder, he would not provide her true identity. As a result, she became known as Eldorado Jane Doe. What's truly unique about Eldorado Jane Doe is that there are actual photographs of the victim, which were circulated in the media and are currently available for viewing all over the internet. Yet, she has never been conclusively identified. It seems that anyone who recognized Jane Doe from the photos had only interacted with her in the years prior to her death, but no one knew where she actually came from. Police were able to place her in several states throughout the preceding years: Dallas, Shreveport, and Little Rock. And most interestingly, several photographs were found in her motel room, which showed that she had previously had beach blonde dyed hair. A Bible was also found among her possessions, which listed the following names: Willie James Stroud, Sharon Yvette Stroud, LaDonna Eileen Stroud, Johnny Lee Stroud, Viola Elizabeth Ross Stroud, Donna Jean Stroud, Bobby Jones Stroud, and Willie James Danzler Sr. These individuals were determined to be the members of a black family in Irving, Texas, who Eldorado Jane lived with for a period of time in mid to late 1990. She told the Stroud family that she was a runaway from Louisiana and had recently moved from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Eldorado Jane Doe had lived under different names such as Sharon Wiley, Shannon Wiley, Cheryl Kaufman, Kelly Carr, Cheryl Ann Wick, and Mercedes. Most recent to her death, she was working under the name Kelly Carr as a topless dancer in Little Rock, Arkansas. There, she told people that she was originally from Florida, though this has been unverified. In May 1991, only 2 months before her death, Eldorado Jane Doe was arrested for writing bad checks. It is established that she was frequently at the hospital emergency room from beatings and that sometime prior she had worked as a prostitute in Dallas. Eldorado Jane Doe's lover and alleged pimp, James McAlpin, maintains that Eldorado Jane Doe, who he knew as Mercedes, shot herself with his gun during an intense argument. However, witness testimony from neighboring motel rooms, a history of violent altercations with the victim, and the fact that James immediately fled the scene with the gun all suggest otherwise. McAlpin received 15-year sentence for Mercedes' murder, but went back to prison in 2011 for another crime. He claims to have visited some of Eldorado Jane's family members and to have actually known her identity. However, according to police, James said he wouldn't give them Mercedes' true identity unless they did something for him. As recent as March 2016, James was offering to only reveal Mercedes' real identity if someone pays him $4,000. However, authorities do not believe that James has much solid information to share. The most interesting piece of information he provided was that Mercedes was connected to the Fort Worth 3, a case where 3 young girls vanished during a shopping trip to a Fort Worth mall on December 23, 1974. According to McAlpin, Mercedes and the 3 girls were raised in captivity as a part of a prostitution ring and became close friends. However, investigators say that McAlpin is a pathological liar and that no one should believe anything he says. As of now, Eldorado Jane Doe remains unidentified. Number 5. Mary Shotwell. On October 14, 1965, Mary Shotwell Little decided to go shopping and have dinner with her friend. It should have been a normal evening for the newlywed, who had tied the knot with her bank examiner, Roy Little Jr. On that October day, Roy was out of town, training to become an auditor. Mary planned to throw him a surprise party upon his return the following day. Not only would this party never happen, but Mary would never see Roy again. After finishing her shift on October 14th, Mary drove her new metallic pearl grey Mercury Comet to Lenox Square. Mary finished shopping and brought 4 bags of groceries to the car. During dinner with her co-worker, she spoke favorably about married life and seemed to be in good spirits. At approximately 8 p.m., the two concluded their meal, and Mary walked through the parking lot towards her car. Her last words to her co-worker were, "See you." The next morning, she failed to show up for work at the bank, and phone calls to her home went unanswered. Her co-workers found it alarming that the usually punctual secretary didn't show up for work and didn't answer the phone. So her boss called the security at the Lenox Square. Her co-worker told him where Mary had said her car was parked and relayed that information to the security. Her boss was told that her car was not found. Her husband was reached and he returned home. Now this is where things get a little weird. Her boss drove to Lenox Square around noon and after a few minutes finds the car in the spot the co-worker gave. There was a coating of red dust on the car's exterior, and the 4 bags of groceries, Coke bottles, and a pack of Kent cigarettes inside the car. Mysteriously, there was also a slip, panties, a girdle, a bra, and 1 stocking inside the car. With the exception of bra and stocking, everything was neatly folded and sitting on the console between the front bucket seats. The stocking appeared to have a knife cut through it. The panties were determined to be Mary's. More disturbing was that blood was found on the undergarments and smeared on the steering wheel, the driver's side door near the handle, the inside passenger side window, and both front bucket seats. An unidentified bloody fingerprint was found on the steering wheel. The blood was not in great quantity, only that amount you might get from a nosebleed, and the blood was tested to be Mary's. Due to the relatively small amount being found in wide range of places within the car and the nature of it being smeared, some police officers believed the car was staged. Because the car's engine was cold and the ignition key was missing, police theorized that it could have been driven during the night for no more than 40 miles. A traffic officer claimed that the car had not been in the lot at 6 a.m. that morning. Every available police officer was put on the case. The woods near the shopping center were the subject of an exhaustive search. Investigators questioned Mary's friends, one of whom disclosed that Mary had expressed a fear of being home alone and being alone in the car several days before she vanished. Additionally, authorities learned that Mary had received flowers from a secret admirer days before the incident. The flowers were traced to a florist near Mary's home, but the specific buyer could not be identified. Co-workers also said she had been receiving telephone calls that left her shaken. She apparently had said to the other person on the phone things like, "I'm a married woman now. You can come over to my house anytime you like, but I can't come over there." On October 15th, Mary's credit card was used at an Esso gasoline station in Charlotte. 12 hours later, the card was used again at another Esso station, this time in Raleigh. The credit card slips were signed Mrs. Roy H. Little Jr. and appeared to be in Mary's handwriting. Attendants at both stations recalled a woman with a minor head injury with bloodstains on both her head and legs, and was accompanied by 1 or 2 unshaven middle-aged men who appeared to be commanding her. The woman tried to hide her face from the attendants and did not ask for help. The North Carolina plate number noted on the charge slips turned out to have been stolen in the days before Mary's disappearance. Being that Charlotte and Raleigh were only 2 or 3 hours apart by car, the 12-hour difference seemed odd. Also odd was the fact that Charlotte was Mary's hometown. Once news of the credit card slips was released, Roy received an anonymous ransom call demanding $20,000 for Mary's return. The caller told Roy to go to an overpass in the Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina, where further instructions would be posted on a sign. An FBI agent went in Roy's place and found a blank piece of paper attached to the sign. The caller was never heard from again, and the FBI believed it was a hoax. In May of 1967, 18 months after Mary disappeared, Diane Shields, a former CNS employee who was hired after Mary's disappearance and who not only worked at Mary's former desk but also roomed with Mary's former roommates, was found dead in the trunk of her car, suffocated and strangled by a scarf and paper found in her throat. Diane was not sexually assaulted and nothing was stolen from her, including her diamond engagement ring, so the motive for the murder was unknown. According to Diane's best friend, Diane had told her she was secretly working undercover with the police to help them solve the disappearance of a woman named Mary, but no official police record were ever found to corroborate this. It was later concluded that the 2 cases were unrelated. Now, this is something I found interesting. A few days after Mary's disappearance, a woman came into the Atlanta police station and reported an incident. She said she was in the mall the same day Mary was there. She left a little before Mary would have, but she stated that when she was walking to her car, she realized she was being followed. She hurried to her car and locked the door, and a man came to her window and said that her back tire was low. She left quickly and went to the service station, only to find that her back tire was in fact not low, and all of her tires were fine. Was this the same man that harmed Mary? Authorities continue to follow every tip, every false lead, and every possible sighting, but despite exhaustive efforts, Mary was never found.